Today I'm going to be going over a game that features a queen sacrifice on the 7th move of the game. It is nothing short of spectacular. Our protagonist with the white pieces is named Eero Einar Book, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and this was played in 1924, so their theory is a bit out of date, but it does feature some crazy moves. So white starts off with e4, black responds with e5, knight c3 is the Vienna game, knight f6, and I play the Vienna, and I like to go with f4 immediately, the Vienna gambit. White chooses the more principled bishop c4, simply developing. Maybe f4, maybe knight f3, we don't really know. But black plays the knight sacrifice, knight takes e4, which isn't really crazy, it's really common to see this. The point is, if you take on e4, there's d5, getting your pawns in the center, and there's a fork on the bishop and the knight. So you really shouldn't take the knight on e4. And white goes queen h5, a bit dubious in my opinion, because usually you don't want to bring your queen out so early, because we all know the Scholar's Mate is probably one of the worst openings to exist. But it does serve a good purpose here. Attacks f7 and e5. So the best move for black here is to go knight to d6 after queen h5, because you're simultaneously attacking the bishop and you're also defending f7, and you shouldn't really care about queen takes e5, because queen e7 takes. Don't forget that black won the e4 pawn here, so material is equal. And black's ready to castle, your bishop's being attacked. But instead of knight to d6, black plays, in my opinion, a big blunder, knight g5. Because it does not gain tempo on the bishop. It does defend f7. Don't forget it's protected by the queen. But now white can detonate the very nice move d4. A pawn sacrifice, which isn't really a sacrifice because it's actually discovery on the knight. Because if you take, I remove the defender of f7, simultaneously attack your queen. So that would just be completely winning for white. So black has to find the best move, which is knight e6. You interfere in the connection of the bishop to the f7 pawn, and you also attack the d4 pawn twice. Now, my first instinct here would probably be queen takes e5, just because I'm pinning the knight. I win that back the central pawn, my queen's in the center, I'm just going to get ready to develop, bring my rook, and, play chess. Well, white chooses a different move, a d5, which obviously taking on e5 was probably the right thing to do, but d5, in my opinion, is probably even better than that. Black should definitely go knight d4, and then there would be queen takes e5, queen e7, queen takes e7, bishop takes e7, bishop d3. That is the line that the computer gives where white has a slight edge because of his pawn in the center, and his pieces are much more ready to go than black's pieces. Black does not play that way, and instead sees, oh, my knight's being attacked. I watched a Gotham Chess video that said danger levels, so I'm going to go g6, which is a huge blunder. Right here, I would simply not even think for a second and just go queen takes e5. I'm hitting the rook, so bishop g7. Now I just draw back, and this knight's being hit, and it's also pinned to the king. So I'm just going to pick up a free knight. And that's just, I wouldn't calculate anymore. But Mr. Book, with the white pieces, thinks even more deeper. He doesn't see one line, because there's that famous saying, if you see a good move, look for a better one. And white does look for a better one and finds the brilliant d takes e6. Obviously, black takes the queen. And now, white will take on f7, king goes to e7, bishop to g5 check, and that's a skewer winning the queen. But if you think that's the game, that's the entire game, it's not, because, believe it or not, white does not take this queen for the entire rest of the game. Black is obviously forced to move to d6, and now instead of taking the queen, where you would be a piece up, white chooses to long castle with check. Black goes king c5, attacking the bishop, gaining a tempo, saying, okay, now if you take my queen, you won't be material up, because I get to take your bishop. But white just says, whatever, and decides to give up his bishop anyway, because he sees a checkmate if black takes the bishop, and he does. The best move is to go king v6, rook b5, and king a6. And believe it or not, despite this dangerous-looking X-ray, black is actually doing fine. There is no checkmate. The best is to just take on d8 and go for a checkmate anyway. Get your knight out, get your rook out. Play chess up a lot of pieces. But black obviously chooses to take on c4. That was the entire idea of going to c5 in the first place. If you thought the sacrifice were over yet, you're wrong, because b3, he gives up the knight. Black can't take because of bishop d2, mate. So king b4. And now it is checkmate in 4 moves. So white plays rook b5. Again, you can't take on c3 because of knight to e2, checkmate. So black is forced to move to this tiny little corner in a3. And now knight b1, a retreating move, checking the king, forcing king takes a2. And now rook a5. The king has nowhere to go. The bishop is forced to block. Too bad that square is guarded by 2 pieces. Rook takes a3, checkmate. And I find this final position to be really funny, because you'll see that the king, which starts out on e8, has bravely marched all the way down to a2, and black is just up an insane amount of material, but none of his pieces has even moved, and the bishop is just staring down the queen for some reason. The knight's back on its home square. We all know the journey that it took, but that's the spectacular game.